Welcome back from the break. A time for us to go into the big stories. And you know what? Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta will on Wednesday present the 2024 budget statement and economic policy of the government. He'll be doing this in Parliament. This presentation aims to outline the government's strategies for revenue generation and policies to alleviate the current economic challenges faced by all of us Ghanaians. Also, Parliament has beating a U-turn after intense public backlash over the decision to hold the post-budget workshop at the Rock City Hotel in Kwahu. MPs were set to travel and stay at Rock City for 3 days for the workshop, but NDC MP for Buem constituency, Kofi Adams, raised the issue on the floor, fighting the decision because of the cost implications. Would also delve into this particular issue. Honorable Hassan Sohini is MP for Tamale North. He is here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my brother.
Hope all is well. Good to see you too.
Alhamdulillah, we can't complain. Under the circumstance, we just have to give God the glory.
Okay.
And keep moving.
Under the current hardship, I mean, circumstances, right now we all know that things
should be specific, not circumstance. Thank you for providing the word hardship. We just have to be hopeful and keep prodding on. It's not easy.
All right. Yeah. We'll also be joined on Zoom by Professor John Gachi. He is Dean of University of Cape Coast School of Business, the only university of competitive choice. I'm sure Al-Hassan would want some program there.
I'm not going to litigate that now. But you know that it is contestable.
Oh, no, it is not.
Well.
It is not. It's not at all. Anyway, let's start from this note. I asked you a question earlier.
Right.
Why do we have beautiful economic document policies, but we are not able to actualize these policies?
Well, generally, I think it has to do with our character. And that is why you hear many of us, say, and it has been said long before I could even consider myself an adult, that Ghana seems to have all the right laws and legislations and policies, but our problem is always with implementation. And I think it boils down to character. And it is that very poor character and attitude that we take into leadership positions. And because we are unable to manage our attitude well, we tend not to get the full benefits from the, correct policies and laws that we pass as a people. And that is why it is said that the fish starts rotting from its head.
From head?
So if, as a people, generally, we lack character, it shows in the people who emerge as leaders, because those people would have also been part of us. And we, maybe based on our own character, would have chosen those people to lead us. And with that, attitude and leadership, you will have all the nice things on paper, but you will not be able to get the full benefits out of it. I mean, that is the soft side of why we tend to have some of these very good policies intended to transform the country that never really does that magic for us. That's on the soft side.
Okay.
Now, on the hard issues, you can talk about some of the unrealistic projections that we make in our budgets.
Okay.
I mean, for example, what happened to the government's budget when they overestimated how much they were going to get from the
E-levy. Yeah.
I mean, so some of these things can only be explained away by political expedience.
But people say that one was because of the sort of, propaganda that greeted it, because I'm sure they did the analysis based on the number of people who are using Momo services, and they could tell that we could rake in this much. But there were a lot of education on it to say that if you do government doesn't put all of our resources into the proper use, so don't do it. And that's why they couldn't realize, isn't that the case?
I mean, it's not true. I mean, you are into communication, and a communication strategy is as good as the content and the acceptability of the content. So people generally were opposed to that tax. Experts cautioned as a result of that opposition, general overwhelming opposition. Because, you see, already tax payment is not a pleasant thing. And so when you have people overwhelmingly disagree with a tax policy, it is only foolhardy for you to persist. We saw it during VAT.
Okay.
That is how Kumepreko was organized. Was that propaganda? The issues that rallied people around to oppose the VAT at the time that they did were as relevant as the issues that rallied people around to oppose the e-levy. If we had a listening government like we had during the days of VAT, they would not have willy-nilly pushed it through with the same assurance that they will still get their projected revenue, even in the midst of the opposition. That, for me, was a hint of the level of disrespect that they have for the ordinary Ghanaian. Because when the people say, we don't like it, and you say, we will still pass it, and the people will still pay, and will still get the revenue that we want. The previous government during VAT didn't do that because they saw that you needed to go along with the people. And that's why I'm saying those are some of the hard issues.
Okay.
Our inability to face reality because of political expediency. And that is also, even witnessed after the budget is passed, and then we go into the year and begin to firefight and deal with things that were originally not planned. The president goes to a community and then out of political expediency cuts short for the construction of a road or a factory that was not budgeted for.
Really?
It happens all the time. And now the finance minister will have to find money, for it. Look at the National Cathedral and what we were told, how much the finance minister, had to
cough up.
To support the National Cathedral. And he says it came from the emergency votes. Can you imagine?
But is there any road like that the president has done that was not in the budget?
Oh, I can't pinpoint one immediately, but usually it happens. I mean, if you follow the political, scene, sometimes these roads, that's the unfortunate thing, sometimes these roads never even get finished. Out of political expediency, it is announced for construction. A contractor is perhaps given some mobilization, goes to put machines on the road, does some, earth movement here and there. And then when the results are gotten, they are abandoned. We saw it during the by-elections in Kumewu and Asinov.
Okay, let's get to the budget proper.
Right.
What is your expectation, of the budget tomorrow? You are an MP. You see what's really happening firsthand.
Generally, I am expecting government to tighten its belt. I'm expecting to see a budget that shows a government that is sensitive to the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. One of the ways the government can show that sensitivity is for them to bite the bullet, for them to cut down on some of it's unnecessary expenditure. And when they do so, they will be making savings. And those savings can be applied to more critical areas.
Okay.
Because we all know that the economy is on its knees, if not in coma. Mm-hmm. And so it is important that the little revenue that still comes to government, even as we suspend our debts payment, are applied judiciously in especially the productive sectors that can, revamp the economy moving forward.
Okay.
So that we do not waste this holiday period that we have of not paying our debts, only for us to be confronted with the payment at a time that we are not ready. I do not expect to see more taxes.
Okay.
I do not expect to see an increment in the existing taxes. I think the ordinary Ghanaian has endured enough. Apart from the skyrocketing, prices of goods as a result of the unprecedented levels of inflation that many Ghanaians are enduring, they have also had to endure losses as a result of the DDEP. Elsewhere, people would have been on the street every day. We saw it in 2008 in the United States of America when the economy crashed.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, people would have been on the streets every day. But people are quietly counting their losses in their rooms and in their offices because they understand that this is a difficult moment.
Okay.
And they live in hope that our government will also make the right decisions, conduct themselves in a way that will revive the economy in the shortest possible time, even though we are told by experts that not even in the next 10 years will our economy be able to come back to the state that it was in pre-COVID and especially post-COVID.
Really?
But at least, people are still patient. They are enduring the high prices, the inflation, the high unemployment, unprecedented levels. You do not hear, like you used to hear about unemployed graduate association, even though unemployment has moved from about 8% to almost 14%. And yet that should tell you the level of endurance that the ordinary Ghanaian has endured.
But if you talk about,
has shown.
If you talk about the economy not seeing the growth it had pre-COVID, we understand that 5 months after implementing the IMF program, we've started seeing some truth. That GDP growth rebounding strongly, averaging some 3.2% in the first 2 quarters of the year. And this is even contrary to IMF forecast of 1.5% for the end of the year. Doesn't this show that if we do the right things as we're doing today, we'll probably get there in the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, the same IMF has said that it will take us not less than 10 years if we grow.
That's before the implementation, isn't it?
Yes.
That's where they forecasted 1.5, but now we're not realizing 3.2%.
So even that, we'll need to grow our economy more than it is currently growing.
Okay.
For us to even revive the economy in the next 10 years. So the point I'm making here is that yes, the implementation of and don't forget, government has simply last year and this year done nothing. Like nothing. And anybody who operates in the economy will attest to how slow things have been. And so the only things that perhaps they have done is to fund their sometimes expensive lifestyle, which in my view, even if not significant, is offensive to the ordinary Ghanaian that is making sacrifices.
Yeah.
But government has really, not over borrowed or overspent, because they don't even have the capacity to borrow again. So that inaction is perhaps the reason why the system is cooling down, like the figures are showing.
Okay. But so you mean they are not spending?
Yes.
That's why we are seeing this.
That's why we are seeing I mean, where is this growth coming from? You should ask yourself. Where is the growth coming from? It is that answer that will tell you what our government is doing right or wrong. But what I do know is that because government expenditure is now under some level of scrutiny by the IMF, they have become a bit more careful.
Okay.
The smart economics the smart accounting that the finance minister was doing.
Why did he change from economics?
No, it's
accounting?
not economics. I mean,
really,
we've seen it. It was smart accounting. Okay. I mean, that's hiding the numbers, hiding some of the debts, under footnotes. That wasn't smart economics. It was just smart accounting, and it has been exposed as a result of the engagement with the IMF, and so they no longer have the opportunity to do that. But generally speaking, I think that yes, the IMF program so far has been helpful, and I hope that the government will have the discipline to continue to go through some of the prescriptions.
Conditions.
Yeah, the prescriptions that the IMF have for them. But we have to do it mindful of the impact on the ordinary Ghanaian who has already suffered and endured so much.
Earlier, you mentioned that you're not expecting to have new taxes, right?
Yes.
And increases in the rate of taxes.
Yes.
What if they do? What would you do?
As a minority, we have already served the notice through our minority leader, Dr. Atuforson. He said it clearly when Parliament resumed that our group will not support, government's decision to impose more hardship on the ordinary Ghanaian. And so we will be scrutinizing the budget with a tooth comb. I mean, we will do it diligently.
Okay.
And I can assure you that anything we find burdensome in that budget, burdensome for the ordinary Ghanaian, will face fierce resistance from us as a minority. And that is why already we have indicated that as people in authority, we need to send a signal to the ordinary Ghanaian that we appreciate and understand the challenges that we are in, and that we are in it together. And so the sacrifices must not be made by one side, those out of government alone in that case. It must be made by both sides, those in government and outside government. Our signaling has been the call that we made and supported for the Speaker of Parliament to, for the first time in a long time, hold the post-budget workshop in Parliament. So that costs of that post-budget workshop can be managed better than it would have been if we went to the usual.
We went outside.
We went outside Parliament. Yeah. Yes, I mean that's the signaling that we on the minority side, are showing, and true to that spirit, you can be rest assured that anything that this government wants to introduce in that budget that we consider to be additional burden on the ordinary Ghanaian will face fierce resistance from us.
But can you attribute that to the minority in general? Because your leadership agreed to, moving out of Accra. It was your colleague MP for Boeing and some of you who rather protested on the floor. So can it be a minority work?
Well, yes, it is minority work. I mean, there have been contrary, reportage on the matter. Yesterday on the floor, when the matter came up, I heard the minority leader say, for example, that at the business committee meeting, the venue for the post-budget workshop was not discussed.
Okay.
Perhaps it was taken for granted that the speaker, usually with the staff of parliament, after their assessment of proposals, determine the venue. And so at the business committee meeting, according to the minority leader, it was not discussed. And so many members, including the leadership, were surprised when the deputy majority leader, my very good friend, Honorable Afeni, in presenting the business statement, revealed from wherever he got that information from, that the venue for the post-budget workshop was going to be Rock City. It was that surprise that led to the discussion on the floor, where the suggestions came from our side, led by Kofi Adams. The suggestion that we should have the post-budget workshop rather in Parliament to save costs, which was then supported by members on our side, including the leadership, on our side. So clearly, it's a minority proposal, which the speaker's determination to also, give the right signal to the people that we are willing to also bite the bullet and reduce government expenditure. Ensured that the decision was arrived at yesterday for the meeting to be held in Parliament.
So you mentioned earlier that we have to stick with what IMF is recommending, the prescriptions.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing the growth that is being reported. And one of the things is to look at revenue, isn't it?
Right.
So if they don't increase taxes or introduce new taxes, then how does government raise revenue?
So you quoted me halfway.
Okay.
I said we need to follow the prescriptions of the IMF, but mindful of the impact that it may have on the ordinary Ghanaian. I said so.
Okay. Yes.
And one of the ways to manage revenue is reducing unnecessary expenditure. An expenditure cut is actually a revenue gain.
Okay.
So, for example, how much government was going to spend for the post-budget workshop has been saved.
Will it be reduced or entirely saved?
Reduced. The reduction is saved. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what the saving you have made from changing the venue outside Parliament to within the premises of Parliament is actually a revenue gain to government that can be applied to other use. But for that decision, and let's use, fictional figures to illustrate the point. Assuming government was going to spend, say, 25 million on post-budget workshop, and doing it in Parliament, it saves 20 million. Maybe government would have liked to introduce a 0.5% tax to raise 20 million to provide textbooks for school children. That saved 20 million can take care of that. That's why I am saying that an expenditure cut is actually a revenue gain.
Okay.
And so we do not necessarily have to meet the revenue, mobilization expectation of the IMF through increase in taxes or its rates. By just being prudent and disciplined with our expenses, we can meet the revenue expectation of the IMF.
Okay. Now, there are key areas that, you even mentioned earlier that we have to grow the productive sectors of this economy.
Right.
One area is agriculture. over the years, we've been doing lip service, we've been playing lip service with it. We say we'll do this, but it doesn't, really materialize. So as we prepare to bring about this 2024 budget, you are coming from a region where agric is really the mainstay of the people there. What are you looking at in terms of hearing the policy guideline regarding development of agric in this country?
Sincerely, when I think of the agric sector, I feel pained by how much resources have gone into that sector in the last 7 years, and how much we have blown that on just rhetorics. And those in that sector, trust me, are even more pained because they understand the issues that I am talking about. I mean, the grants that we got, especially from the Canadians that was supposed to help with the planting for food and jobs, and how we have wasted it. In some cases, awarding contracts for the construction of warehouses that have not been constructed or poorly done and are not utilized. And you don't even do the right investments in production. And you go and you are anticipating higher yields. And so you award contracts because party apparatchiks must get jobs to do.
But they brought the PFJ, which was to support farmers to increase production.
That's why I'm saying rhetoric. I'm saying there were grants. Monies were also voted from central government to support the planting for food and jobs. But what do we have to show? Food inflation in this country is one of the highest. In fact, when the Fiscal Service does the presentation, food inflation is the lead cause of the high inflation that we have in this country today. If the PFJ was successful, we wouldn't have that situation. So that is the reason I feel pained. So much came by way of revenue to support the growth of the agric sector. But somehow, so much of it was just wasted.
Okay.
And I'm not surprised that the one in that sector thought he could be president. Sometimes that's what happens to people with too much at their disposal. They begin not to see reality. And that's why it was so real to all of us that it was an unnecessary and a useless ambition. But he couldn't see it. I think that government has to reassess that whole planting for food and jobs program. It needs to be re-evaluated. And I'm not the one just saying it. There are several reports from civil society organizations in that sector that has called for a review of that program. In fact, the latest one I read was from the Imani, Ghana. PFJ has to be reviewed.
But Brian Achampon is implementing the PFJ .2.
So that is yet to be fully assessed. But it's as a result of, in my view, and if you want to be fair, you agree with me, the failure of the PFG1 that led to a consultative forum after Brian Achampon came. And some review was done. And I'm happy that we now all agree that the word review does not mean cancelling. That review was done. But it is yet to be assessed because they have just begun the implementation of the PFJ2. It is my hope that he will also get it's impossible, especially given the financial circumstances that we find ourselves now. But it is my hope that he will get at least some level of, revenue or, investments that his predecessor had.
So what do you want to hear about the agric sector in the budget tomorrow?
I want to hear a focus on processing, especially. You know, I am a rice farmer.
Oh.
And I know that a lot of farmers in our, farming communities have issues with their produce. They harvest and they do not know where to sell it or where to have them processed. In fact, last year, the farmers came together to address the press on how, the prices that were offered by the few processing, companies around were not competitive. Again, this year in the field of rice, in the northern sector especially, many of the rice farms were attacked by birds. In some cases, people with 20-acre farms could not harvest up to 2 acres.
Wow.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes. I will want to hear how government intends to address that bird situation as we prepare for next year's farming season, because a lot of farmers lost their investment to these birds this year. I want to hear something about how to guarantee the farmer some level of comfort and assurance that when they till the land and make investments in it, they will not lose it to some of these predators. And they are not such that an individual can easily deal with them. In fact, they are migratory birds, I'm told. And in some cases, the information we are hearing is that our neighboring countries are fighting them. And so they are beginning to migrate into Ghana. So I want to hear some level of investment in processing generally, not just into the rice production, but general processing of the agricultural produce that we have in this country. And I also want to hear some investments in the area of fertilizer supply, weedicide supply, and the prevention of these predatory birds from destroying farms.
Not a cap on importation of, for example, rice, because if now local farmers can produce more, so if there's a cap on importation of rice, the local farmers can then get the impetus to produce more.
That is also something that is worth considering, because yes, I believe that if our local farmers are challenged, they have the capacity to produce enough rice to feed this country, especially if we have the right processing plants dotted across the country.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you, but let me bring in Professor John Gachi. He is Dean, University of Cape Coast School of Business. Prof, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us here. Now, my first question is, you have been monitoring the economy. You know what's happening. Is the Ghanaian economy growing?
A benchmark.
Hello, Prof. Unfortunately, we're not hearing you. So if you could...
Is it okay now?
Okay, yes, it's okay now. Yes, let's hear you.
Yeah, unless you set some benchmark to compare. But as we know, we do know that our economy should be growing consistently around a certain percentage. And this is not happening as we expect. Just after COVID, we thought that we resume growth. But in 2022, that was truncated. And we see the numbers that we are churning out. And then again, we see the projection of the IMF that we need to be working with. And that is not the growth that will take us to where we want to go. Growth is very important in trying to contain the debt burden of the country. So if we continue to grow at this lower panel, that will not solve our problems. So I do not think that we are the optimum yet. There is more room to improve on the growth direction of the country. But this will not come by itself. It will come by conscious investment efforts. For example, if you look at disaggregated data from Statistical Service, it is very clear that there are about 10 agricultural produce that when we target them and give clear targets to ourselves, that will help to contribute to the growth of the economy.
Okay.
For example, some time ago, we pegged rice production and consumption in the country to about 30%. What are we doing? The volume of rice that we import into the country, what is the percentage that is grown or produced within? If it's about 20%, can we set for ourselves by 2 years' time 60%? The same thing applies to tomatoes. The same thing applies to some of the items that we are importing that we are not happy about. So it takes a conscious effort. How do we make even production and agriculture in general contribute to management of currency and management of inflation? So these are the things, when we accept a policy framework, will help the growth of the economy to go in a direction that will contribute to fiscal measurement. Today, we are focusing on revenue generation. That is not a bad idea. But revenue generation alone is not going to be the solution of the economy. We need to see the growth come back forcefully to complement all this effort at increasing revenue mobilization.
Now, it has been reported that Ghana is growing, the GDP growth is averaging some 3.2% in the first 2 quarters of the year, contrary to 1.5% presented by the IMF. Inflation has also dropped to 38.1% in September, while cedi's depreciation has slowed from the beginning of the year to date, after depreciating cumulatively by about 23.5%. Now, on the fiscal front, the primary balance on commitment basis for the first half of the year was a surplus of about 2 billion cedis compared to a target of a deficit of 4 billion cedis. Now, gross international reserves, which measures how the country could fund its import bill, also stood at some $2.1 billion, equivalent to 1 month import cover, compared to $1.5 billion, that's 0.6 months of import cover recorded at the end of December 2022. So, as we prepare to present the 2024 budget, and we know all of these, what are you expecting to hear from the finance minister to consolidate these gains and, to build on that? First of all, you might want to confirm for us whether these are true facts.
Well, some of them are just projections, and the realities will come when the data is compiled at the end of the fiscal year. So it is then that we will see whether the growth is actually outscale what was projected. And it happens all the time that real performance will outperform the projection.
Okay.
And the good thing about the Ghanaian economy is that for over a decade, all the projections for Sub-Saharan Africa, all the projections for West African sub-region, Ghanaian economy try to outperform all those indicators.
Okay.
So we are hoping that will be the outcome. But the doldrum that we have fallen into is such that the level of growth that we need should be very robust, consistent over a period of time before we'll be able to solve our problem. So all the growth we're talking about, they still suffer for the defect of the growth that we have been churning out over a decade. We describe the growth as not inclusive and not coming from the sectors that will galvanize contribution to the economy from revenue perspective, from employment perspective. So even the growth we're talking about is the same type of growth that we're talking about. That does not mean much to contribution to revenue, that does not mean much to contribution to employment generation. So we need to also be setting how inclusive the growth that we're talking about is coming about. It is then that we'll know that we are doing something. And of course, we do know that there is a pass-through effect or pass-through period for all these indicators to have effects. But if you look at a reduction from 54% to 38% over a 5-month period, we need to be seeing some reflection on prices.
Okay.
Other than that, what is the joy of reduction in inflation, such a significant margin over a period of 5 months? That has no reflection. I know people will say that, pass-through period, but the question is, what is the pass-through period? Is it 1 year? So we need to be questioning, and that is also informative that the inflationary pressure that we have in the economy is largely because of fiscal dominance. That is by the Bank of Ghana lending to the central government for its activities. That has actually contributed hugely to inflation. And so long as that activity stopped, and then we have also stopped paying our external creditors, that has actually put a lot of respite for the economy. Okay. And that is what we are seeing, the drawdown in inflation. And perhaps that is the reason why it's not even reflecting in pricing indicators in the country. So we need to now look at managing inflation from, the issues of production. We need to manage inflation together with all the benefits we are getting right now, so that the overall benefit of inflation will be reflective in our market, will be reflected on our indicators. We want to see inflation benefit policy rates. We want to see inflation benefit interest rate development in the country. You cannot tell me that 16% drop down in inflation is not significant to change the course of policy rate and lending rates in the country.
So must we target probably say the food inflation, once we know that is the major contributor to the increase in inflation, to achieve a lower inflation?
That is the low-hanging fruit we need to address with policy. And that is why I said that if you look at disaggregated data from the Statistical Service, it gives you impression the area that we are spending so much money to import food produce into the country, for which we have the capacity to produce with the given environment and then the incentive that are needed to prop up production in those areas. And when we do that, we are solving three problems at the same time. We are increasing our ability for food sufficiency. We are also fighting depreciation with that measure, and we're also fighting inflation with that measure. So that benefits us from three perspectives.
Okay. All right. Now, the 2023 budget statement announced a 7-point agenda, which was were aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and accelerating Ghana's economic transformation. Now, these points were aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, streamline and rationalize expenditures, boost local productive capacity, promote and diversify exports, protect the poor and vulnerable, expand digital and climate-responsive fiscal infrastructure, and implement structural and public sector reforms. How would you rate the performance of the government over these 7 points that they introduced in the 2023 budget?
Well, I think the budget was read in November 2022, but we all saw what happened from last quarter of 2022 and to the first quarter of 2023. And so largely those things did not materialize. and they do not impact significantly to the economy. The only area is that we are seeing market improvement in fintechs, market improvement in digital platforms and the rest. But that is only about payment system. You need employment, you need incomes to participate comfortably in the digital space. So that is why we cannot replace creating employment, we cannot replace growing the economy, we cannot replace developing the productive sector of the economy with digitalization. They should be complementary effort at achieving the desire of the economy. So I would say there are factors that actually mitigated against achieving those set goals for the 2023 budget.
Well, interesting. So let me come into studio and bring in Hassan Suhine. So Prof seemed to agree with you that, I mean, the productive sector could probably be the way to go. But if you look at how things are being done now, do you foresee that there will be that commitment to the productive sector in the 2024 budget?
Well, at this point, they don't have a choice. They need to make those commitments. And perhaps they also need to begin to face the reality of the failure of some of the political rhetorics that they have been engaged in and have convinced many to believe those rhetorics are really policies that are aimed at transforming this country in any way. At least they have eaten the humble pie on a number of them, like NAPCO. It is time that they face the reality of their political propaganda and spin. For example, the teachers and nurses' allowances. These are supposed to be in arrears. In some cases, arrears beyond 7 months, in some cases, 10 months. It just points to government's inability to pay. Otherwise, why will they not pay them as they promised that they will pay them? So it's time for them to face the reality and make the necessary admissions like they have with NAPCO and say, this can't work. We thought it could. We're wrong. John Mahama was right. The NDC was right. We need to, make some saving there so that we can invest in producing more teachers and more nurses who will be assured of hospitals that can employ them. Because you have some of the graduates from the teaching field and from the nursing field who are waiting for posting. They can't be posted because the General Hospital hasn't been constructed. Because if it was constructed, it would have required nurses. So they need to review some of these policies that are also bogging them down. Free SHS.
But
the finance minister.
But non-posting of nurses is not a new challenge, is it?
But it was a challenge that was being fixed through the construction of, multiple health centers, because the savings were made. And that is why when this government came into office, one of their trump cards was that they have posted the nurses. And I always used to ask, did you post them to your bedrooms? You posted them to hospitals and clinics that were constructed by the previous government. Because you didn't post them to new, clinics that you constructed or old hospitals. You posted them to the University of Ghana, the Ridge, and others. The Tamale Teaching Hospital expanded, the Bolga, those were the places you posted them.
But it doesn't matter who constructs them.
It's government. It doesn't. That is why this government should also begin to face the reality and stop the politicking.
They are constructing Agenda 111.
I just gave you the example. What is the state? Let's not even go there. You see, let's not even go there. I'm talking about, the need for them to invest in the productive sectors.
Okay.
And the way to do that is to stop the politicking And when they stop the politicking, they will be stopping the wastage.
Okay.
Because, for example, as they have now come to the realization that NAPCO was not the way of solving unemployment, because even with NAPCO, unemployment has moved from about 8% to now 14%. And they still have arrears that are owed some of the people who were enrolled in NAPCO. And those, many of them, are still at home without jobs. I'm saying that it is time that they have that difficult conversation or approach to say the way and manner that they are implementing the free senior high school. A policy that even we in the NDC also agreed from day one was a very good policy. And because it was good, it needed to be implemented better. It needed to be implemented well. It is time they begin to review it thoroughly so that they can cut out some of the waste that is involved in it. And remember the point I made earlier, which I'll repeat, that an expenditure cut, a wasteful expenditure cut, is a revenue gain.
Yeah.
So when they do some of these realignment, like I said, the teacher and nursing allowance, they must now be bold enough to tell the people the truth, that the NDC was right about this policy, we were wrong, and this is the way to go. Because you see, this whole talk about increasing revenue, the evidence is there that the problem is not more with increasing revenue, but it is more with the implementation or the usage. The usage of the revenue. I mean, the NDC under President Mahama, for example, if you add borrowed funds and tax revenue during his period, it was less than 70 billion. But look at the infrastructure explosion that we witnessed under his government. And the fact that we did not even have to undergo a debt restructuring under his regime. Our economy was not rated junk as it is rated today. But tax revenue plus borrowed funds, if you put it all together, it was less than 70 billion. You are talking about 298 billion since this government came into office. Not 100, 200, almost 300 billion. And yet, we are in the state that we are in, where inflation has run away. Over 30% today. Debt to GDP is nothing to write home about. The last time it was over 102%.
Now it's dropping.
And you are undergoing a second debt restructuring program. So, what happens to the saying that to whom much is given,
Much is expected.
much is expected? So, if the revenue, mobilized is not judiciously and prudently used, you would have done or achieved nothing. And that is why I am focused on the need for us to rationalize government expenditure. That is the way we can get maximum benefit from the revenue that we have been raising.
I guess
and there's evidence, like I said, what 70 billion gave us is not comparable in any way to what we are receiving from over 290 billion.
I guess if you don't see this rationalization tomorrow in the budget, you will probably lead your side to stage a walkout.
Well, that is not a decision I can take as an individual.
But
I mean, it's a caucus.
You can lobby
it's a
from the
caucus
back.
decision, but I can assure you that as a caucus, we have had a discussion on how to approach this budget, and it is through those discussions that the minority leader, Dr. Atuforsen, gave the indication that we will not support any irrational proposals that we find burdensome, especially to the ordinary Ghanaian.
You've given some of the policies that you expect some cut in. What are the other areas that you want to see a cut in? We have several areas that government spent on.
Yeah.
You've spoken about the NAPCO, you've spoken about the free senior high school implementation policy. What else? What are some of the areas that you're targeting as well?
Well, I've also spoken about the allowances. And then I also
allowances
think
to who?
That teachers, nurses, they must admit. I mean, 8 months, 9 months arrears, tell them the truth that you are struggling. And that if you rationalize, that expenditure, it can be applied judiciously elsewhere.
Okay,
that will lead to benefits to them, more benefits to those who are undergoing that trade.
So you want government to take away the allowances paid to nurses
and invest
teachers.
in the student loan trust fund.
Okay.
Because that is where all tertiary students who cannot support themselves through education are supposed to pick a loan. And you see, the NDC's program and proposal at the time was based on the fact that nurses and teachers were guaranteed a job after completion. And so paying back such loans, was not going to be difficult for them. And so all you need to do is to invest more in the student loan trust fund. And let all tertiary students, because those in university, those in polytechnics, now technical universities, are all accessing the student loan trust fund. So why pretend that this category of tertiary students deserve allowance you are not even able to pay anyway? Rationalize it.
So the allowances you mentioned is for the teaching, the teacher trainees.
Yes, teacher
and the nursing trainees.
Nursing trainees.
Not the professionals.
Oh, sorry. I didn't make that distinction.
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was referring to the trainees.
Okay.
I mean that was the policy. So that's why I'm saying that they must rationalize it. They must begin to tell the truth and admit to some of these political games that they played. And being confronted with the reality, they need to address them. I also think that there are many other areas. Like, take a look at the Office of Government Machinery, and how much money is voted to that place. I mean, what benefit do we get from those monies that are voted to the Office of Government Machinery? The number of presidential staffers are just mind-boggling. In some cases, you do not even know the meaning of the designations that some of them are given. Job for the boys. Let's see some rationalization in those areas. It is the right thing to do to bring about confidence in the ordinary Ghanaian that the government is aware of the challenges that we are faced with. Cut the amount of money that goes to the Office of Government Machinery. And you see, this may seem inconsequential, but almost every night before I go to bed, when I go on social media platforms, Twitter, now X, Snap, it's hard not to find the president at one party or the other. I don't know if you have all noticed it.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You find people snapping one party or the other, partying as if there's no tomorrow, as if there's nothing happening in this country. People are not losing their investments. Businesses are not collapsing.
Oh, so he cannot honor invitations to people's parties?
Well,
if you invite the president and he doesn't come, won't you be hurt?
Well, it's up to you. Like I said, it may seem inconsequential, but if you are very sensitive to, the political temperature, there are some things in leadership that you must be careful not to engage in at times like this. It provokes the people. It's provocative to somebody who all day perhaps has not been able to attend lectures because he couldn't make money to pay his fees. For somebody who remained unemployed and does not have hope of getting a job. For somebody whose business is collapsing because he's unable to pay his workers. To go on social media and see the one that is supposed to give him hope at parties dancing all the time. Like I said, it may be inconsequential, but I think that the political leadership must be sensitive to the suffering that people are going through and be cautious with how they portray themselves in times like this.
Okay, all right. So that's Al-Hassan Suhuyini there. Let me bring in Prof now. Prof Gaji, last year in the budget, they were targeting a growth of 2.8 in real GDP, inclusive of oil, 3.0% in real GDP non-oil, 18.9% end of period inflation, overall fiscal budget deficit of 7.7%, and gross international reserves of more than 3.3% months cover. With how things have turned out, what kind of report do you want to receive? Are you expecting to receive tomorrow on these targets?
Well, I think the report, we know them already. We are aware of them. I think the inflation figure was revised to, I think, about 28% for the end of the year. So we may have to look at those information provided again.
Okay.
They have been changed over time. So the real, the message is that we have not met most of our indicators, and that we should be hearing from the finance minister what are the strategies to improve upon those indicators, what are the strategies to meet targets that have been set, especially for 2024, being a crucial year. You remember what happened in 2020, that we are still battling with the issue of COVID and election. We raise so much money from COVID. We do little in the area of COVID, but we could see when we go to our villages, our towns during election year, how money was visibly distributed to people. And we are in 2024. We need to check the budgets. I'm not sure most of the expenditure for 2024 election will be finding their way into the budget, but we need to be very careful, critical things that feature in the budget, whether they are in real term things that we should be doing, or they are just there for vote buying and the rest. Right. So that is what we should be doing in the 2024 budget that will be read to us tomorrow. So it is clear that we have not met those projections. What is needed is the explanation to why we couldn't meet them. Then what we want to do to meet them in 2024. That is critical.
Will you probably be in a position to rate the performance maybe after tomorrow?
You know that it's not fair to do that. Giving your voice and my voice, as soon as I say something right now, you know the implication. But it's not something that we should share away. The performance has been very abysmal. The performance is not encouraging. We are aggravating some of the situation. We need to work very hard to open up the domestic debt market and free up concentration on the Treasury bill. That is very significant. We need to work assiduously to ensure that the downward trend in inflation translates into improvement in other indicators. So those are the things that we should be doing. We shouldn't be, churning out information that will not have reflection of the people. If you read Article 36 of the Constitution, it's very clear the intent of any economic outcome is to make the people happy. Is to cater for the vulnerable in society. You see what happened in the down spillage and the rest, the state is very anemic. It's not able to actually own the situation and cater for the vulnerable. So these are issues that we need to be looking at and be measuring the performance of a government.
People have spoken about capping. You know, when the dialysis crisis started, a lot of people spoke about how we should get capping of the NHIS off. Today, the Birth and Death Registry is also calling for, the removal of capping. Is it your expectation that probably because of how the discussions have been, there will be the announcement of removal of capping on some of these statutory funds?
I don't know how that will be done. It's a concern that over earmarking of revenue is a problem for us. And we have over earmarked the revenue to the extent that when we do the actual distribution, nothing or very small is left for, other investment in the economy. So it is something to look at, but there are statutory requirements that are rooted in the Constitution. And I don't know how just a budget reading will take off those ones. So it depends on the area that they are looking, but some of them are constitutional provisions, and I'm sure nothing can be done about it.
Unless MPs like Suhini decide to raise the issue and then they'll be looked at.
Yeah, but we keep on continuing with the earmarking. And what it means is that we are actually restricting ourselves to be doing what is required of us as an economy. So we can look at that, but let's look at the constitutional restriction before we do that. In fact, that's the reason why, the over earmarking, that's the reason why even we have the statutory sharing of the revenue be in arrears for many times. And even sometime when they are going to pay to them, District Assembly Common Fund and the rest, sometimes they don't pay the full. And that actually truncates or limits the ability of the authorities in the rural economy or the decentralized economy to be able to do effective work at the assemblies and the rest. Okay. I think you heard yesterday that one DC also was saying that even to convey relief items to where they are needed, they don't have money to buy fuel, they don't have vehicle to convey them. So we need to look at it in a holistic manner.
Okay.
But what is needed mostly now is that we need to prioritize efficient expenditure. Any expenditure we undertake should qualify as efficient expenditure. Any procurement we undertake should qualify as efficient expenditure. We hear reports of procurement breaches all the time, and I think it's not the best. That is where the corruption takes place. So we need to foster efficient expenditure across board. And that is what will help the economy come out. Mobilizing more revenue, but weak expenditure framework that is not qualified to be efficient will not help the economy go far.
Okay. But what would be your definition of efficient expenditure?
I just articulated some of them. If the procurement process is fraught with breaches and even corruption, any expenditure on such a thing is not efficient.
Okay.
So that is one clear example that I'm giving.
Okay.
So we need to tie proper engagement with procurement activities with our expenditure, because procurement activities at the end of the day comes with expenditure.
Okay, so I've got the revised target for 2023.
Yeah.
Overall GDP growth rate 1.5%. Non-oil GDP growth rate 1.5%. End period inflation rate 31.3%. Fiscal deficit of GDP, that's a percentage of GDP, 6.4%. Primary balance, percentage of GDP, 1.2%. And import cover, number of months, 0.8. So what would be your expectation tomorrow, looking at all of these targets?
Yeah, as I said, it's a requirement to revise and then provide information on how those targets have actually performed. So we will listen to the finance minister to say what he will give us.
Okay.
But it is very clear that some indicators, unless we get to the end of a year, we cannot get the full picture. So it will still be projection.
Okay. So I have to let you go now, but what will be your biggest advice to the Minister of Finance as he prepares to deliver the budget tomorrow?
I'm not sure the Minister of Finance will take my advice. So there's no need to discuss that.
Oh, you can't tell. Maybe today he will.
Well, if I want to advise, it will be a broad spectrum of activities, and that will be so much. But I can also say that we need to follow this revenue drive carefully to ensure that we strike a clear balance between mobilizing more revenue for the country and creating environment for business community to thrive well. You can use fiscal measures to incentivize economic environment, and you may also use fiscal tools to actually discourage and burden the business environment. So there is a need for striking a balance between the quest to increase revenue mobilization and defining an environment which is conducive for businesses. As we speak now, our business environment is less competitive when compared to our neighboring countries. We need to work assiduously to change that trend. So that is one advice that I will give to the finance minister, if he may like to take the advice.
Yeah.
Then again, we also need to look at the petroleum sector, the way we utilize petroleum sector. When the petroleum activity started in the country, we designed a regulation or an act to guide us how to use the revenue to spur economic development for the country. But it's like we just use the budget process to change the way the arrangement is supposed to be. And that we need to be watching that seriously, because it is not for nothing that normally we want to segregate performance of the economy with and without the oil sector, because we want to see the full effect that is having on our economy. Okay. So there is a need to look at that critically.
Well, if you were the finance minister, would you remove some taxes? Because you want to make business, the environment competitive enough.
Well, I'm speaking from a professional point of view. What we know is that normally, government do not actually remove taxes. What they do is that they realign taxes, they change names, and they change the operation of the taxes. So, for example, I'm wondering why the minister, for example, has kept the COVID levy on the books. He could have just engaged with the tax-paying stakeholders and change the name of the tax to something else, and that would maybe accommodated more than keeping COVID-19 levy on the list of taxes we have in the country.
Okay.
So in real term, government do not remove taxes; they realign them because the revenue that those taxes are bringing is used to the economy, and that they are not minded to remove them.
Okay.
Normally.
So in effect, we'll continue paying the COVID-19, just a realignment or a renaming of the tax, right?
Yeah, that's what I expect.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us here. Professor
Thank you.
John Gachi is Dean of the University of Cape Coast School of Business, the only university of competitive choice. I know people will not want to agree, but that's fine.
The number one in Ghana, number one
in West Africa.
West Africa.
Thank you. Thank you.
And number 7 in Africa.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Serious gang up here. Serious gang up here. Anyway, but you see, isn't it a shame that people like Professor John Gachi feel, and we also seem to agree with them that their ideas will not be welcomed by the finance minister. Isn't it sad? It is that, arrogant, we know it all attitude that has landed us in the situation that.
Is it really arrogance? I've met the minister a couple of times. I even interviewed him recently when they were doing their presidential primaries. He doesn't come across as someone who's arrogant.
Arrogance is not always loud. That's the mistake we make.
Okay.
That's the mistake we make. Some people can actually be very loud but humble. And some people can be very calm but very arrogant in their dealings. And so that arrogance of we know it all and we need no one's help is what has brought us here. I mean, how many times haven't people spoken about the levels of borrowing? Kenke was eating in our faces and Wache eating in our faces. And we're taunted. How many times did we not caution that we needed to approach the IMF earlier than we did?
Yeah.
What were we told? And so it gets to a point where people like Professor John Gachi, do you doubt his competence when it comes to his understanding of the economy and how it should work? Why can't people like that be engaged even before the budget is prepared? Because I know it used to happen in the past. In fact, Imani and others all were engaged. Oh, heck, to a point, the government convened their Senchi Forum. Bring your ideas. That's how we got the economy back on track after it was hit by the single spine introduction and the energy crisis.
Okay.
But it is sad that we are where we are today. And I agree with him when he makes the point that we need to look out for, programs that are basically vote buying programs. Because we cannot afford the luxury that this government took us through.
If he was on
2020.
If he was on, I would have asked him about the teacher and nursing training allowances. I forgot to ask him.
Yeah. So we have to look out for those things. I mean, we saw some of those campaign vote buying programs in the 2020 budget implementation. The free this, throwing the money up and down, and that is why our books are not even balancing today. Corruption and all of that. So we need to look at that. And I like the point about capping too, because the whole idea of capping was to ensure that government, centralize more revenue to do more things for the growth of the economy. Yet we are not getting the benefit of it. And the institutions that hitherto had those funds no longer have those funds. And as a result, they are crippled. Their operations are crippled.
So would you push that in Parliament?
It's time that we begin to have that conversation of denying the finance minister that power to cap some of this earmarked revenues. I think so.
But you're on the first is a committee in
Lands
Parliament.
and Forestry Committee.
Good.
Yes.
You heard about the Kakum forest and someone applying to mining in there, but the Minerals Commission says no, we're not going to allow that, and that they've even deleted the application from their cadastre.
I am not surprised that somebody will have the confidence and the boldness to actually put in an application to be allowed to mine in the Kakum Park. I'm not surprised. It all boils down to the leadership that you give. It is that leadership that will make people know what you will tolerate and what you will not tolerate. So if we have a kind of leadership that gives the impression that they will tolerate such nonsense, forgive my language, you will have people bold enough to apply to engage in such nonsense. I mean, why? The Tanonimirumi Forest Reserve. What hasn't Akonta Mining done there? The evidence is there online, on YouTube. Rape that forest.
On Joy.
On Joy.
Yeah.
Yes. The Tanonimirumi Forest.
Yeah.
The minister said he was constituting an investigative team into it. Only for the president to jump the gun and clear Akonta Mining, that's the name, owned by Wuntumi, and said they were not engaged in any illegal mining in that forest. Achimota Forest. Hey, let's not allow the land to be sold. Sir John and others willing it. The president issues an executive instrument to de-gazette that, so that it can be legitimized. The lands that have been shared among themselves for development will be legitimized. Are you getting the point I'm making? So you tolerate the destruction of Tanonimirumi Forest. You issue an executive instrument to legitimize the sale and development of parts of the Achimota Forest. You have civil society organizations campaigning against the mining in the Etiwa Forest. You pay no heed to them. And you are surprised someone is applying to mine in the Kakum back. Yesterday, I revealed on my Facebook wall that the Tamale Waterworks Forest Reserve, part of it which has been serving as a timber market around the Babu area, has been sold. At first, the argument was that it was sold or not sold. In June, put the question to the minister because somebody was asking the timber market people to evacuate so that he will develop the land. And so the back and forth started. The media took it up.
So it's no longer a forest reserve.
It's part of the forest reserve.
Okay, but that's where the timber market
market is.
Or is now.
Yes,
okay.
That's where the timber market is. But the land is supposed to be part of the Tamale Waterworks Forest Reserve.
Okay. So it is not as though when we go there, we'll see forest there now.
But you will see forest around
it. Okay.
Or at least behind it.
Okay.
You know, because the frontage has been used for the road that leads to the stadium.
Okay.
The Tamale Sports Stadium.
Okay.
So that argument of whether or not it was sold was going back and forth. In fact, the Regional Lands Commission organized a press conference to say that land had not been sold. In June, I asked the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources a question in Parliament. And because you can't lie to Parliament, he admitted that that land had been sold to one company known as Fatu Cariban Company Limited for redevelopment.
Okay. Redevelopment as what?
Redevelopment. We are not told what that entails. But the people operating on that land, the timber market operators and others, were all supposed to evacuate. Only for us to find out, which I revealed yesterday on my Facebook, that land, the minister himself in his answer said it was measuring 1.38 acres in Tamale town, was leased to this Fatu Cariban Company Limited for 50 years at 621 Ghana cedis per annum. 621 Ghana cedis.
For the entire area.
1.38 acres in Tamale town.
For a year.
For a year.
621. Not up to 1,000 Ghana cedis.
No. I mean, so I'm saying that the kind of leadership you show, you demonstrate, is what attracts the level of nonsense, forgive my language again, that we are seeing, where people will have the boldness and the arrogance to apply to mine at the Kakum Park. How do you sell? Look, if you divide 621 Ghana cedis by 12 months, it means that that 1.38 acre land is given to the person 51 Ghana cedis a month.
Really?
You can't even get one bathroom to rent for 51 Ghana cedis in Tamale Town.
And these are official documents.
Yes.
651.
621 Ghana cedis. Why?
For 50 years.
Why? How can you rape the country? Apart from the fact that this is supposed to be part of a forest reserve, which you shouldn't have in the first place given to a private developer to engage in any development that will affect the forest. You have done that. And the revenue you are supposed to get from this person is 621 Ghana cedis a year. I mean, those who were there on that land, the timber market people, the revenue that they, I mean, the what do you call it? The lampo, the taxes that they paid to the local assembly and the forestry commission alone in a month, I'm sure was more than 621 Ghana cedis. It's a shame.
Okay, so I've gotten, the name is Fatu Cariban Company Limited,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Term is 50 years, commences 29th August 2020. So
Yes.
they've already started.
Yes, I mean the minister was in parliament and was saying that the people must evacuate for Fatu Cariban to redevelop the land.
Well, okay, but the document I'm seeing on your wall has that 620 has some. Is that a correct, or they were making the?
I have the full document.
Wow.
I was just highlighting it with a yellow mark.
Oh, okay, for people to see.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, all right. But in general, you see all the fight against illegal mining and all of that. What's the committee doing?
So the Mines and Energy Committee, I know, has been very proactive in dealing with some of these issues. Sometimes there's that crisscrossing. So the Lands and Forestry Committee, of which I am a member, I'm the deputy ranking. Okay. Mining, so to speak, is not under the purview of the Lands and Forestry Committee, okay, except when the mining is done in a forest reserve. Okay. But I mean, I've raised the question, really. Is there any mining that is currently happening, outside?
So mining
forest? It may not be a reserve, but sorry.
Mining is
there's actually Mines and Energy Committee. Okay. So mining generally is under the Mines and Energy committee. So I know that the ranking and members, Dr. Kobna, the ranking John Jinapo and Dr. Kobna Donko and others have been very proactive in raising some of these issues that they find very disturbing in that sector. I mean, when it has to do with mining in the forest, like we have this application to mine at the Kakum National Park, the Lands and Forestry Committee, especially the minority members, I know will be having a meeting this afternoon. We're looking at all of this and some of the proposals that have come for us to look at, even the EPA Act and how it is also furthering some of this destruction of our forest reserve.
Interesting. Let's see how we can all, help in protecting Ghana's environment and forest reserves, especially. Absolutely. Because especially now that there's the carbon trading, it's an area we can look at even raising revenues to support. Yeah. So the more we have it, the more we can raise revenue from that area.
Instead of taxing people.
Exactly. So we can rather conserve the forest to raise more money. Because last year this year there was an announcement that we got some $1 million from that for some work that was done between 2019 and so it's an area we can make a lot of money from. And that is the committee's responsibility to ensure that you get the minister to toe in line. Yeah,
we are doing our best. It hasn't been easy. I mean, when the attitude is not, to do right, then you can make all the noise that you you can make. You can hurl them before the committee, before Parliament. They will still, in most cases, wriggle themselves out. I mean, when the attitude is not just right, then you need to change the leadership.
Okay. All right. That's the beginning of the campaign there. Al-Hassan Suhuyini is MP for Tamale North. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, my brother.
All right. This is still the AM show. We'll take a quick break. We will be back, but kindly join us on social media with your comment on the issues that we've discussed. We've spoken about the economy, the budget that is to be presented in Parliament tomorrow. And of course, we've delved into mining and forest reserves. You can also leave your comments there. When we return, we'll be sharing that with the general viewers. But we also have a conversation on the EcoBank Joy News Habitat Fair. How can you become a home owner? We'll bring that to you. But let me also acknowledge Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic for sponsoring our news review segment. Now, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening in locations across Ghana. In Accra, Spintex opposite Shell Signboard. In Kumasi, Kronima Bohia behind Angel Educational Complex. In Takrade, Anaje Estate, Tema Community 22. In Techiman, Hanswa, and in the Nzema area, please locate us in Esiama. Call us on 0244-867-068 or 0274-234321. 0274-234321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. Now, let me take you to Honorable Sohoyini's area in the north. Escape to Royal Cozy Hills Hotel, Jerapa, Dubai. This Xmas season, you have seen the rest. Now it's time to see the best. Take a break from work this Xmas and take a break from the south. Let's all move to the north. The Royal Cozy Hills Hotel in Jerapa, Dubai is the place to relax, rewind, and re-energize for this Xmas holiday. It is away from the stress of the south. There's too much stress down here. Let's move to the north. Now, this is what awaits you. Unforgettable safari experience. Amazing array of wildlife, including lions, hippopotamus, zebras, ostriches, among many others, using spacious and well-secured game tour vehicles or using squad bikes. Now, there's also water sports such as the jet skiing, boat or canoe ride, among others. We have various family games to keep you and your families excited every day. Great tourist attraction in the Upper West region, including the Mushroom Rock, the Slave Caves, among others. And that's how it is. So escape from the south and escape to the north. Escape to Royal Cozy Hills Hotel, Jerapa, Dubai for an unforgettable safari experience this Xmas season and beyond. Please call 0501-694280, 0501-694280 or 0248-844463 for reservations or further enquiries now. So that's it. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back to talk about the EcoBank Joy News Habitat Fair. Do stay.